Hello, everyone. Good to have you here. To give you a little overview of what's going to take place today, we'll do some quick introductions here with my two wonderful guests. We'll have Yu-kai is going to kind of be the he's the keynote here, and truly excited to have him talk about gamification, engagement, etc. across industries. Wenwen's going to give more of an overview of what we're seeing in the life insurance space. And then we're going to go into some Q&A because we believe, connecting the two is a really important thing on how we connect gamification, but also with the life insurance space that's truly vertical and specific here. So you are able to, in the right-hand side, you have a chat feature. So you can chat in questions at the end. We will attempt to source some of the great ones or ones that we have time to and most relevant to the formal audience. And if you have other questions, we will get back to you. Yu-kai and Sureify team will kind of source those out to get back to you. So please use the chat to ask your questions. No bad ones. There's no such thing as a bad one. I wasn't saying no bad ones. And we hope you'll use that to engage with us today. It's 10:05 here in relatively sunny California. So we're going to get started here. We got a great turnout today. And as engagement is a very, very, I'll call it interesting subject, as well as I think what I would call the holy grail of life insurers' goals because of where we are today. And so this is going to be great. Actually, I'll throw it to Wenwen to introduce herself, and then Yu-kai, because we're going to spin right into you. But for those of you who don't know, I'm Dustin Yoder. I try to host our webinar series on new subjects. I'm the CEO here at Sureify, which means I get to work for and assist all the great people, about 150 we now have here. So Wenwen to you, and then to you, Yu-kai.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Wenwen. I'm the engagement product manager here at Sureify. Prior to that, I worked in both insurance and technology space for quite a few years, having spent my time in John Hancock, in Amazon, and also a couple of startups. I also recently graduated from MIT with an MBA, and super passionate about how we can use technology for digital transformation for the insurance industry. And I'm honored to be here today.
Hi.
Hello, my name is Yu-kai Chou, and I'm a thought leader in the field of gamification behavioral design. And I started working in this field since 2004. I regularly consult and teach my framework at places like Stanford University, IDEO, Google, Lego. You'll see in my presentation also many financial firms and insurance companies. And look forward to sharing some of the knowledge to the crowd here.
Well, without further ado, you guys take it away.
Great. Let me boot up the slides here. Cool. So today we're going to talk about gamification and behavioral design. I made a pretty brief intro of myself. The few things that I haven't said, because it's nice to have some visual, is that my work so far, we did some calculation last year. We've empowered over 1 billion user experiences, which disclaimers that's not 1 billion unique human beings, because 3 companies could have the same human as their customers. We would count that as 3 users. These are some of the companies I work with. So a lot of people think, oh, gamification, I must work with a lot of gaming companies. But actually, the sweet spot of gamification are things that are very, very important, but potentially boring, mundane, intimidating, or sometimes highly competitive, like retail. Everyone has to stand out some way. So a lot of these fields are in healthcare and education, insurance, finance. And so you can see here, this is a little bit more optimized for the financial companies we work with. You can probably recognize some insurance companies like AIG, Jackson National, Sherian, whatnot. These are some of the things people have said. We're not going to go through the quotes, but basically just say there's a lot of people in insurance or in finance who think, oh, this is not as relevant. And I wanted to show that, hey, there's people who work in pretty strong positions in these companies that have a good experience with gamification and whatnot. Wrote a book, Actionable Gamification. If you're curious, you can go check that out. And if you don't like to read books, I have a gamified island to learn about gamification called Octalysis Prime. All right, so jumping right in, what is gamification? It's very straightforward. Gamification is applying all those fun, exciting elements found in games and applying those to what we call non-game / boring context. Things that, you should do, you should think about, you should care about, but you're just not motivated, you're not engaged in it. You'd rather go and watch TV, watch Game of Thrones, play video games, hang out with your friends. And so the idea is that we want to understand, what do the games do that engage our minds so much, and then go into and then pull that into things that are important. Now, one thing in our research is also that everyone actually needs to be playing some kind of game in their lives. For some people, the game is their work, which is why they become workaholics. They hate taking vacations because, why would you take people away from their favorite game? For some people, it's the stock market or sports. That's why they know all the stats or clipping coupons. And so from our research, we show that if you cannot find a game worth playing in the real world, that's when you go to the digital world and you play video games, because our brain needs to feel engaged to something. We need to feel that stimulation. And so at the core of gamification, I believe, is something called human-focused design, as opposed to function-focused design. Most systems are function-focused. It assumes that people in the system will take the desired behavior, and then it optimizes for efficiency, for usability, for ergonomics. So it's a bit like a factory where you assume people do their work because you pay them to do it, and then you maximize your production, your efficiency. Whereas human-focused design remembers that people in the system have feelings, have motivations, they have insecurities, they have reasons why they do or do not want to do something, and it optimizes for that. So that's more like a theme park where you design it to be extremely fun, and then you can predict that people automatically want to line up for hours and hours just to enjoy that fun. And the case here is that when you look at a factory, you're paying these people to do relatively mundane things of factory life. But when it comes to a theme park, they're actually paying you to stand in line for hours and hours because they want to enjoy those few minutes of enjoyment. Now, the reason why we call this gamification is I believe the gaming industry is the first to master human-focused design, because there's no real purpose to playing a game, right? You never have to play a game. You have to do a lot of other things, do your training, pay your taxes, maybe take your medicines. And even if you don't like it, you kind of just have to suck it up and do it. But again, for a game, you never have to play a game. The moment a game is no longer fun, you leave the game, right? You play another game, you go to YouTube, you go to Gmail, check your email. Even if a game was amazing for 9 months, if in month number 10, it's not engaging, you just leave, right? So games live in this brutal world of the moment they don't meet this certain criteria of satisfying our brains, they are gone. And so that's what we're learning from that discipline that games have spent decades or centuries mastering how to do. And that's what we call it gamification. Next. All right, and so we're going to show a few different gamification examples in this talk too, but also introduce the Octalysis framework that combines all of it together. But before that, I wanted to give a bit of context between what is a gamification design. And there's actually two types on the spectrum. There's implicit versus explicit gamification. So explicit gamification is actually something that looks like a game, feels like a game. You can probably opt in and opt out of it, and it's more of a gameful, magical experience. So here you can see one that has a car avatar. This looks like a game, right? But this is actually a loyalty program we designed for Porsche in Europe. And then the one on the right, it completely looks like a game. There's like character talking to you. There's a futuristic city. There seems to be some kind of currency. But this is actually a CRM system we built for a sales team that goes and knocks on door to door for retailers. And then we have the implicit gamification design, where the best type of designs is kind of like a doorknob. It's invisible. You just use it to open the door. You don't even think about it. And if people ask you what color that doorknob was, it's like, well, was there a doorknob? I'm sure there was because I opened the door. But So, but I don't remember what the color is, right? So it's just there. It's invisible, but it just has a lot of motivational triggers to nudge people in the right direction. So if you go to a site and they show you a progress bar, you won't really feel like, oh, they're trying to make me play a game. I don't want to play a game. So a lot of times in our project, we let clients pick, where they fall onto the spectrum, depending on their company culture and the target audience. And but I'd say a lot of companies, they try to be conservative on the implicit, and then when they did tests with their customers' audience, it turns out it doesn't matter if they're CFAs or 100 millionaires, which are all my target audience for client projects. They end up liking more exciting type of experiences. So this is what I'm most known for. This is called the Octalysis framework. And it's called the Octalysis because it's a combination between the word octagon and analysis. And basically, inside, there's what we call the 8 core drives that motivate all our behavior. And then outside, there's an example list of game design techniques that can bring out those core drives. Now, this chart is pretty busy, but at the beginning, we really focus on the middle. And what's unique about those 8 core drives is everything we do inside or outside of a game is based on one or more of these 8 core drives, which means that if there's none of these 8 core drives there, there's zero motivation, no behavior happens. And then, so today we're going to quickly go through what those 8 core drives are. We're going to have to do a quick talk, and I'm talking pretty quickly because there's a lot to cover. I'll show some examples, and then you'll see there's the different natures of these core drives. Some are what we call white hat motivation, that makes people feel powerful, in control, they feel good. But there's no sense of urgency, so people procrastinate. And there's what we call black hat motivation, which makes people feel urgent, obsessed, even addicted. But in the long run, it leaves a bad taste in their mouths because they feel like they're not in control of their own behavior. And then we're going to look at what we call extrinsic motivation core drives and intrinsic motivation core drives. So the first one is called epic, meaning, and calling. So this drive that says we feel motivated because we feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And this is, for instance, why people contribute to Wikipedia. We know people don't do it because they can make money, but they don't even do it to advance their careers, update their resumes. A lot of people spend a few hours every day after work contributing to Wikipedia because they believe they're protecting humanity's knowledge, something bigger than themselves. And so a quick example is Ant Finance, Alipay, which is a Chinese company. And they're a payments app, but they say, hey, if you keep doing the payments activity, you're able to grow a tree, and eventually you can turn those trees into real trees planted in real life. And you can see it's kind of visual, so it's an explicit gamification design. Now, what's unique is that by August 2019, they actually planted 122 million trees in China because of this. So a lot of people feel like, oh, I can use different apps, different payment services, I can do all these things. But here I feel like I'm changing the world, right? I'm saving, I'm a humanity hero. And so it feels very engaging, motivating. So people were more likely to use this financial service because of that epic, meaning, and calling. Core drive 2 is development and accomplishment. So this basically says we feel more driven because we're improving, we are improving ourselves, we're achieving mastery, we're progressing. And so this is where you see most of the points and badges fall into. A lot of people think gamification is basically points and badges. And so points are basically counters, right? Mathematical counters. They show you a sense of progress. So even though people are doing the same things over and over and over again, at least they see this number growing bigger and bigger, or their progress bar, or this progress are moving forward. And so for some people, it's like their work is the same every single day, but they see their bank account growing every day, so it makes them feel happier. Badges are what we call achievement symbols, and they symbolize a sense of accomplishment. So achievement symbols can be many different forms, could be badges, trophies, could be crowns, uniform changes, could be black belt, white belt in martial arts, and of course later adapted to Six Sigma. But the key thing is that it must symbolize an achievement. If you give people a little silly badge for every little thing they do, then it's just the icon, right? It loses its meaning. This is another example by a bank. It's an Emirates NMD. So they wanted to focus on improving wealth and health. So they have a very interesting savings program where you sign up and it attaches to your phone or your exercise tracker. And basically, the more you exercise, the higher interest rate. So you'll say if you have less than 5,000 steps, your interest rate is 0.25%. If you have more than 15,000 steps, then your interest rate goes up to 3%. And so they say, run more, it's in your interest, right? So it's a pun on that. Improving your health and your wealth together kind of design, and people tend to like that. There's a quote from Business Insider that they said there's a study that said 68% of respondents said they would be likely to engage with incentive programs to reward a healthy lifestyle and wellness habits if offered by the insurer, right? So this is not longer a bank, it's their insurer. And so that's why a lot of this is relevant in terms of, hey, how do we actually get customers to like their insurance company more, to engage with the insurance company and to talk about it. We want to make sure it's not just, oh, when bad things happen, or I just don't want to think about it. It's, hey, every day I feel happier because I'm a customer of this insurance company. And I think that creates this very strong competitive edge. Core drive 3 is empowerment of creativity and feedback. So this is like Lego, give users the basic building blocks. And there's an infinite amount of ways for them to use their creativity, try different strategies, see feedback, and adjust. So this is about strategy, self-expression. It's about meaningful choices. And this has a lot of implication in terms of education and training. So if you look at kids who play card games like Magic the Gathering, they actually need to remember a lot of information. There's over 1,000 cards. Each card has 2 to 6 stats, defense, attack, special effects. And the kids who play this well not only memorize all the stats, they memorize things like, oh, your card counters my card counters his card. And if you think about it, that's actually more information than the periodic table. It's like these kids not only memorize every single element, they memorize the weight, the exact placement, and exactly how every single element interacts with each other. So they know this plus this is the granite combo, but if you switch the order, it's a diamond combo, it's more powerful. And so it's genius, right? These kids are brilliant. But if you ask these kids, okay, so what is the third element? A lot of them will say, oh, I don't know, hydrogen, oxygen, I have no idea, right? And it's not because they suddenly went from being geniuses to idiots. It's because of a change in motivation. For the periodic table, they're only studying to get acceptable grade. And so they'll study hard enough to get there. It doesn't matter if you're A student, B student, you studied hard enough to get your acceptable grade, and then you stop, and you probably go play games. But for those card games, each card allows you to become more powerful, allows you to come up with new strategies and beat your friends. So if as a means to an end, you are memorizing a lot of information, that's not only acceptable, that's actually enjoyable. They're really passionate, excited when they memorize these things. So a lot of clients come to me and they'll tell me, oh, Yu-kai, our employees, they're not so highly educated. A lot of them are blue collar workers. They can't remember the restaurant, our menu, or all the programs and plans we offer. They don't know how to explain this, or the operation in the factory. And almost at all time, almost every single project I've seen, the problem is not their intelligence, but just their motivation. These people go home and they remember all the stats in the basketball, right? And so how to get people to engage is very, very important. Core drive 4 is ownership possession. Basically, because you feel like you own something, you want to improve it, you want to protect it, you want to get more of it. So this deals with virtual goods and virtual currencies. It's about protecting your own life and your future. MetLife actually has this interesting design where they have MetLife Infinity. Your memories, your story, your future. So it allows you to record a lot of things go on in your life, the biggest moments, right, worth revisiting. And it allows you to send it to your future self or future family 25 years later. So it's about really enlarging your life and creating your legacy and passing that to the next generation. So here's an example again of insurance, but it's about making every day feel more meaningful because they're the customer of this company. Core drive 5 is social influence and relatedness. This is what you do based on what everyone else thinks, do, or says. So it deals with collaboration, competition, group quest, social appreciation. It also has this relatedness piece, which are things like nostalgia. If you see a product that reminds you of your childhood, you automatically have a higher chance of buying the product. If you meet someone from the same hometown, you have a higher chance of striking up a deal with that person. One example is the group quest. So the group quest is popular in games where a bunch of people have to get band together and defeat a boss. If they do it, they can get a reward. And then later on, you got adapted business where you have Groupon or Indiegogo, Kickstarter. They say, hey, if you reach the win state, you'll get a major reward, a big group discount or some innovative product that didn't exist before. But the only way to reach the win state is if a lot of players band together and do it together. So that's an idea of that social quest design in a business. Core drive 6 is scarcity and impatience. So this basically says we want something simply because we can't have it or it's very hard to get. So that exclusivity is what engages people, or because it feels very scarce. And this is how Facebook started at the beginning. Facebook at the beginning says, oh, the Facebook.com is only for Harvard University. If you don't go to Harvard, too bad, can't use Facebook. And then it says, well, it's for Harvard, some Ivy League schools and some other schools your high school buddies got in, but you weren't smart enough to get in. I noticed MIT is on this list, so good job, win-win. So then people think, oh, I wish I could get in. And so when it opened up to UCLA in 2004, when I attended it, everyone rushed in, not because they already knew how great Facebook was, but that sheer exclusivity alone made people want to join. You're not allowed. Okay, now you're allowed, and everyone rushes in, and they replicate that model successfully, as you know, in every single school in the U.S., and then all the high schools, and then eventually the whole world. There's another interesting game design technique called the magnetic cap, which is if you want people to do a certain action, you actually place a limit on how many times they can do it. And this seems unintuitive, right? If you want people to let's say, refer their friends 100 times, refer 100 friends, why would you say you can only refer 3? The problem is if you say you can refer 100 friends, they don't care. They do 0. So there's an experiment that showed a grocery store where they said, 10% of eggplants. And they saw that people bought on average 4 to 5 eggplants because that's enough to cook a nice meal for the family. But then they changed it to say 10% of eggplants, but you can only buy 10 max. And then suddenly people are buying 6 to 7 eggplants on average. And it's kind of weird, right? Because they bought 4 to 5. Why do they buy more now? And it's because, now there's a limitation and we hate boundaries. We hate limitations. So we're going to challenge it. So we're going to take advantage of our God-given rights to buying 10 eggplants, right? So that's why I call it a magnetic cap. It's a cap. It stops the behavior, but it's magnetic. It sucks it to the top. So people tend to do more because of that scarcity. Core drive 7 is unpredictability and curiosity. So basically, this is you're doing something because you don't know what's going to happen next. You're always thinking about it. And so this deals with, it's heavily utilized in the gambling industry. But whenever you have like a sweepstakes program, a lottery system, a raffle ticket system, you have this core drive. There's a lot of scientific research behind this core drive. The most well-known is the Skinner box. Scientists, B.F. Skinner, put different animals in a box, mouse or pigeon. And so the first experiment is that whenever the mouse presses the lever, food comes out. And what you'll see is the animal press the lever until it's no longer hungry because it doesn't need food anymore, right? Makes sense. But when they switch the mechanic to the point where whenever the mouse presses the lever, food may or may not come out, and sometimes 2 come out, what you'll see is the animal will constantly be pressing the lever, regardless if it's hungry or not, because it's just messing with its brain. Will it come out? Will it come out? Will it come out? And then you have a little bit of gambling addiction right here in a Skinner box. In the early days of gamification, some people said, giving people points and badges is like putting them in a Skinner box. But with the Octalysis framework, you will realize that's imprecise, right? Because points and badges, if done well, is about core drive 2, development accomplishment. The unique insight about the Skinner box is not that points, badges, or rewards drive obsessive behavior, but it's unpredictable rewards, variable results drive obsessive behavior. There's another example in the financial world, Amnitrium, which is they wanted people who are low income to save more money, and they noticed that low income people buy more lottery tickets, which is not good, right? They should use that for the bread money. So they have a design that says, hey, every dollar you put into our savings account becomes a raffle ticket, and that allows you to win, again, a little lottery every month, every quarter, every year. So you can still get to play the lottery, but you do it by savings, right? And it doesn't matter if you put in 150, a million, right? It doesn't. Their payout is the same. So, but each person's chance of getting the payout is larger if they put in more money into their savings account. Core drive 8 is loss and avoidance. So it's straightforward. You're doing something to avoid a loss. You don't want something bad to happen. It's the fear core drives. I mentioned in a lot of the life insurance things, annuities. A lot of time it becomes this core drive where you just have to keep paying. And once you can't pay, you lose the game, right? You lose everything. And so people feel like very stressed. And so they borrow money in it. And we'll talk about a little bit of this black hat motivation and what it does to people. But an example is Booking.com, where they use loss and avoidance, right? They say, there's only 2 tickets left and there's 10 people looking at it and you only have 10 seconds to buy. And everyone's like, I gotta go buy. So they create that urgency and it creates desired behavior. Now, again, we'll talk about it because it's black hat. Some people don't feel happy about it. So those are the 8 core drives. And it's also graphed on an octagon for a reason. The left side, we call them left brain core drives. It doesn't mean it's necessarily on the left side of our brains, but it symbolically represents our logical brain versus the right brain core drives that represent the emotional brain. Now, what's interesting is the left brain core drives correlate with extrinsic motivation, things you do for a reward, purpose, or a goal, but you don't necessarily enjoy the activity itself. So once you obtain the reward, you hit your goals or you get used to the reward, it gets stale, you stop doing the behavior. The right brain core drives deal with intrinsic motivation. So these are things that you just enjoy doing to the point that you're even willing to pay money to just experience it. And even if you lost all your progress tomorrow, you would still do the activity today because that's how we measure our quality of lives. How much time we spend doing things we just enjoy, hang out with our friends, play some basketball. And so that's a left brain versus right brain kind of design. But also there's a top versus bottom difference. The top ones are what we call white hat motivation. And so if you're always doing something because you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. You're improving yourself, achieving mastery, using creativity. Feels great, but there's just no urgency, right? Because you're in full control. You procrastinate. The bottom ones are black hat motivation. So if you're always doing something just to avoid a loss, just because you can have something, or just because you don't know what's going to happen next, it's still extremely powerful in motivating our behavior, but in the long run leaves a bad taste in our mouths because we feel like we're not in control of our behavior. So there's that white hat, black hat dynamic. Now, a lot of companies these days like to do what we call data-driven design, and they think it's very and it sounds very intelligent, right? We don't know the answer. We'll just look at data and do what works. The problem is that because black hat always drives urgency, whenever you're too focused on data, you're always going to do more black hat. So it's like, oh, obviously say, hey, we tell users if they do this, we'll punish them. Hey, they stopped doing it. That's great. Let's use this everywhere now, right? It doesn't, and so it's often useful to remember, well, we need to add back the white hat elements to make them feel good about the system, want to stay, to enjoy the experience. But just because it's called black hat, again, doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. Some people voluntarily put themselves in black hat to go to the gym more often or eat more healthily. So this is a funny example where it's an alarm clock where every time you hit the snooze button, it destroys your money. So you're waking up because of core drive 8, loss and avoidance, right? You don't want to lose money, so you wake up. But you're okay with this because this is a goal you want to accomplish. You want to wake up. What people don't like is when marketers, employers, governments, educators, parents use a lot of the black hat motivation to get people to buy things they don't need, work overtime without proper compensation, get manipulated. And a lot of people still do the desired behavior because this stuff is obsessive, but the moment they can escape the system, they will want to. Employees leave, customers go to competitors, some children run away from home when the parenting strategy is too black hat. But if it's something you want to do, then you can do it. So once we have the framework, then we can start to analyze various experiences. Is it white hat, is it black hat, intrinsic, extrinsic? We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to introduce the framework. So those are the 8 core drives, and that's the basic of the Octalysis framework. And what's really interesting is when I created it, I just wanted it to be a nice tool. But then these days I go to Google Scholar and search the Octalysis framework, and apparently there's over 1,000 PhD theses and academic journals talking about, if this fits in stress management or quality assurance of travel. And so I'm pretty blessed that the framework I created also is strong in the academic world, and it seems to not be defeated in an easy way. So and so that concludes the Octalysis framework. Usually when you want to do something, we do have a 5-step process that I'm just teasing, I guess, right now. We're not really going through that. And then the first step is defining a lot of components of creating engaging component. But I think at the beginning is really just to understand human motivation, those 8 core drives. Cool. Yeah. So if you're curious about more, this link just takes you to Amazon. You can check it out. And then I think we should go to check out what the industry does with gamification.
Yu-kai, thank you so much. I'll be honest, I've seen all this, but that was 25 minutes. Yes, you went long. I got to tell you that, but I was actually happy. As it was going on, I felt like I wanted it to keep going. So it's so interesting. And I'm not just saying that. I wouldn't say anything and just pass it to Wenwen if I didn't feel that way. But I truly think as an industry, we are looking at these saying, how do we bring in things that really matter into life, annuity, et cetera? And it's so interesting to ask ourselves these big questions because they're philosophical mixed with the science, and then now moving into kind of practically how we're seeing it play out. So thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll make sure to get you questions. We'll get the questions at the end, guys. So Wenwen, over to you for the kind of overview of what we're seeing right now.
Oh, sure. It's a pleasure to talk about engagement in life insurance and also collaborate with Yu-kai to explore how we can bring human-focused design into the space to improve customer experience. So before we do that, let's first understand why do we need engagement in the first place. So the insurance carriers, they are now currently undergoing a digital transformation journey from paper and fax to web and mobile apps. And having that engagement allows carriers to establish a relationship with every customer so they can build trust and brand loyalty. And that ultimately leads to improvement in NPS, in persistency, in cross-sell, and also reducing cost. So the next question is, who are these customers? Obviously, there are many ways to look at it. The way I've presented here is I've segmented into 4 big groups based on their needs and also behavioral attributes. So the first group, I would call it millennials. They enjoy new technologies. They are oftentimes early adopters. Why do they get insurance? Their unpaid debts is their primary motivator. For example, student loans, car and house mortgages. The second segment is what I call young family. So juggling between work and also having to take care of their kids. These group of customers, they really value speedy service and automation. And they want to protect their young kids. That's one of the primary reasons they want to get insurance. In contrast to this group, the third segment is what I call the late career adults. This is a group of people that are very well informed. Our research shows that when we ask these people to rate their financial literacy, a lot of them say they are in the top 5 to 10%. They know exactly what they want and how to get it. Their focus is on retirement planning and maybe saving for college. And the fourth group is the retirees. And as the silver population, they value interpersonal interactions and also stability of cash flows. So with these customers in mind, how do we engage with them? So at Sureify, our Lifetime Engage platform, we offer a whole suite of elements for a broad audience. The way I would see it from a top-down perspective is at the top, we have the themes, which are 3 of them, essentially physical, financial, and mental well-beings. And to bring these themes and purposes to the customers, we built a series of interactive features, and that include polls, quizzes, IoT device integrations, challenges, checklists, and so on. We also empower our carriers to customize these through capabilities such as analytics and configuration. So I'm going to illustrate with an example how all the elements actually come together to work. All right, so this is an example. We start with through social integration. We know that a customer just got married on Facebook. And that triggered our system to generate a tag for the customer, and we call it newlyweds. And that in turn triggered a notification to send to the customer's phone, congratulating on their marriage and bringing them into the app to look at a checklist, when they just get married. Maybe that means reviewing of address. That means updating of beneficiaries. So as you can see, this is a highly personalized and like a very high value engagement interaction that's tremendously helpful for our carriers to uncover additional needs of the customer. And therefore, they know how to effectively serve them through cross-sell, at the same time reducing cost on call center management. We also recognize that different carriers have different customers and the needs are maybe varies here and there. So instead of offering a straight out-of-the-box product, we actually provide a platform for our carriers to easily and efficiently try out different ideas to build a holistic wellness experience. And ultimately, that means every single customers, they have the tools and motivation to protect and nourish their good life. And that translates to improvement in persistency and also NPS. And all this is really just the beginning of this whole engagement quest for life insurance industry. And with our customers being ever more connected through their smart devices, there are just a ton of opportunities down the road for such meaningful interactions. And that's why we have Yu-kai here today to explore how we can bring human-focused design to push the boundaries and improve customer experience. So that means, what exactly gamification elements have the industry explored? So first, they are already in the carrier's branding messages. I'm sure you can have a lot of insights here. From my knowledge, for example, in State Farm, where we say "be a good neighbor," that is social influence core drive. For Allstate, they have a commercial about raccoon mayhem, that is the loss avoidance core drive, and so on. In terms of the day-to-day engagement, and putting it into the Octalysis framework, so this is a few highlights on the key elements. For example, for epic meeting, we have storytelling, charity donations. For accomplishment, we have badges, leaderboard, progress bars. For ownership, we have health score. For social influence, there's inviting friends, community challenges, interpersonal coaching. For scarcity, we have daily limits. And unpredictability, we have random rewards, highlights. And for avoidance, we have streaks. And so you can feel free to jump in to comment on these elements here.
Yeah, I think it's very strong, and you can see there's almost all the core drives there. The only one that's kind of like is core drive 3, empowerment of creative feedback, which is actually the hardest core drive to design in most cases, because again, it's about giving people meaningful choice strategy, freedom to do whatever they want, and so most time it's, in order to give people freedom, you need to have a very free system, right? And so I think there's innovation there. And this is on the right top, right? So that's the white hat intrinsic motivation core drive. So it allows people to become the most engaged. But I think everything else is quite strong. Of course, there's different ways to do it well or not so well. But the storytelling, right? A lot of times it's about, the meaning of your life and what you're leaving for retirement or your next generation. I think that's very, very important as a big motivator. The charity donation, like I said, it's like you're just by being part of the program, you're saving the world, helping people. And so, health score is about your own ownership, your own health. So I think, yeah, this is a very strong type of thing. One thing that we do hear a lot is people say, oh yeah, we have streaks, and streaks should be about making people feel accomplished, right? Should be development accomplishment. And in theory, yes. But what happens is that when you have a streak design, it inevitably always becomes loss and avoidance. So at one point, people are really afraid to lose their streak, and they're afraid to go on airplanes now because maybe they'll miss their check-in. And so this is good for short-term motivation, right? That black hat is good for short-term. People are obsessed. They want to come in every day. They're afraid to lose it. But the moment they lose their streak, they slip up. They burn out. They're like, oh yeah, that was a good run. I don't think I'll ever do 60 days in a row anymore. I think I'll just take a break, and they'll just leave forever.
I feel like that happens to me with my workouts, like week 1 most of the time. Just in life, I feel like my wife lets me know about that. I have another just a statement for you, Yu-kai, like on this, like, and I want to hear your agreement or disagreement. Like, I feel like when we look at life insurance in general right now, I feel like we're super early. Like, if you even scan the global market, which you're familiar with, and I think Sureify has been exposed to a lot of global kind of innovations, et cetera. I feel like we're almost like a 2.5 or 2 out of 10, really, on a maturity cycle, right? If you look at, I'll call it uses. Now, this is completely my subjective statement, but like, how does it feel? Like, you're an expert here. Like, do you agree with I would call it like the statement of immaturity in this space, and like we have so much opportunity here?
Yeah, I think it's this happens with a lot of traditional businesses, right? Because a lot of things start up in Silicon Valley, and it's all these tech companies, and then it sounded crazy to everyone else, and then the US and Europe, and then there's an innovation like curve that goes like Silicon Valley invented the internet, right? Social media. There's a time where people said, oh, website is a fad. Right. And then afterwards, they say, oh, wow, you need a website to even be a real business. But the social is a fad. And then people say, oh, you need to be on social, else you're irrelevant. Right. And I think this happens a lot. And I think for a lot of industries, especially because of COVID, they're realizing that, oh, they need to innovate. They need to be different. And so we're looking at a lot of banks, car companies, manufacturers. They're suddenly realize they need gamification. And I think insurance companies tends to be like the two things have been pretty strong in general. And but the key thing, so it is early stage for sure. And I think the nice thing is if it's early stage, that means if you do it, then you have a competitive edge, right? You're better than everyone else. It's just like a stadium. If you stand up, then you can see clearly. But when everyone stands up, then you can't see anymore. Then you have to learn, then you have to jump, and then you have to learn how to fly, right? And so I think a lot of trends, just like I said, websites or social media, at the beginning, whoever does that well, figures it out, is a competitive advantage. Later on, you'll have to do it just to stay, keep up with everyone, So I obviously recommend if you're gonna do something, you should do it when it gives you an edge, as opposed to you do it for survival. So I think the fact that it's early it means it's opportunity for everyone, like you said.
Well, and one thing also I'll admit from a company perspective, and Win-Win can obviously speak to this, is the day you start something like you start utilizing the human-centric design, gamification, A/B testing, I feel like it's not the day you're like ahead in a sense, it's the day you start learning, right? Now that's just from my experience, right? Like you launch something across industries, but specifically in life insurance, and it's really the day you start gathering data, because there's no kind of source to go to gather that data prior, versus, if you're going to build a social media company, right? Well, we know there's places to go and like things to hold on to. I feel as though it's a lot less accessible, specifically financial services, and then more vertically insurance.
Yes. And for anything, I think there's no excuse to not start learning, right? Everything else is learning. There's no risk. You gain knowledge and you improve, right? And I think a lot of times it's if you are innovating, and the nice thing is that the Octalysis firm allows us to understand how the brain works, right? And that doesn't change. So our clients are in all these industries, and we're not experts in any one of them. We can't be, but we're experts in how the brain works, what engages the brain. And so if you have a solid foundation of that, you can have the best prediction of how people respond to designs, right? Oh, obviously people respond to your social, like they want to feel appreciated. They want to feel competent. They don't want to feel unappreciated, incompetent, right? You can take those as an assumption, and then you can predict, even if you're doing something that no one in your industry has ever done, but you're designing for the same human beings that are driven by these core drives. So you have a much higher chance of achieving success because of that.
So that's actually a good segue to the third part of the webinar. So we prepared some questions. So I guess we are already talking about it. I'm curious, what is the right level of gamification for life insurance industry, or is there a reality for too much engagement or too much gamification?
Yeah, so the first question is, insurance is a very serious topic, right? And I think when we talk about, a lot of people confuse enjoyment to that it being not serious, right? And this happens when I work with Scandinavian companies. They have this culture of, hey, everyone should enjoy life. There should be creativity. There should be freedom. And so they catch this very well. But German companies, they have a different culture. A lot of them believe that fun is evil, right? Life is about perseverance and hardship. And so anything that allows people to have fun is bad. And I said, well, they're having fun doing the activities you want them to do, working harder, right? Being collaborative, buying your product. And so your business metric will all go up. Now, as a consequence, as a side effect, they'll actually enjoy the process. So hopefully that's not terrible, so terrible you decide to not improve your business, right? And business metrics. So just because it's serious doesn't mean that people shouldn't enjoy doing it, shouldn't be engaged, shouldn't feel like there's a sense of purpose and meaning, a sense of path of improvement and mastery, right? Everyone will feel like, yeah, I want that in my life. And I especially want that in the serious things that are important. Now, when it comes down to too much gamification or too much engagement, so I think in general, as long as activity is a positive thing, right? It's to improve people's lives. There's no such thing as too much engagement, unless they're just so addicted to, they just really feel like they want to use this insurance app all day long, and they're not eating and they don't talk to their friends. I don't think the insurance industry is at risk on this level of engagement. When it comes to too much in gamification, so generally speaking, there's risk if you add a lot. The risk is just that it requires higher skills. So some people will say, oh, look, are we adding 2 types of points and currencies in the system? Our users will be so confused. It's so crazy. But if you look at Candy Crush, right? My mother-in-law, who's 72, she loves Candy Crush. And Candy Crush has all these game elements. Every stage, there's all these different types of candies. There's a score. There's all your friends' score. There's the different combos, and after you finish stage, there's the map. The map has a score and all that stuff, right? And there's 3 stars after you defeat it. 1, 2, 3 stars after defeat all that stuff. She's not confused. She loves it. She enjoys it. And there's the diamond, the virtual currency, all that stuff. And she's fine because it's designed well, right? Now, the risk is this: if you add a lot of gamification technique, it requires more skill to do it well because it gets more complex, right? If you have a single cell creature, then it's easy to kind of get it right. But if you have a complex animal, it can do way more things. It can run fast, it can run far, but it's easy to mess it up and, and
let me throw in something there too. I think there's a difference too of like pre-sale and post-sale. So I will, like, our experience here at Sureify is like, as we look at the greater markets, right, we know we've served the high income across the industry pretty well, right? The lower income and or the broader market across North America, we are trying, I think as an industry, we're trying to access them as they grow in their wealth. And there is a common misconception that life insurance and as well as annuities are quite hard to understand. And so I would like the buying experience versus post-sale in-force engagement and or gamification is actually different subjects, right? Like if you look at it, I would say like my formal opinion would be we'd never want to confuse someone's pre-purchase, and you do want to make it simple because that seems to be a documented and research-driven roadblock for many people. The other thing that I would throw out that this makes me think of is like, I think people confuse gamification in theory with like the visuals. And you talked about this, but like insurance companies want to stay on brand and ultimately they also don't want people to think like their future in 50 years is a game, right? Because it's not, right? Or saving money, a tactic there could be a game. And I think like credit card points, everyone has a credit card that I know of. They want their points. They want to get upgraded. You can call airline miles, you name it. They don't think of it as like something not serious, but they enjoy that aspect. And I think people commonly misconstrue that. I know you touched on that early, but in life insurance, I think no one's promoting like it doesn't have to be a fun feel as much as
if you think about it, carbon credits for gamification, it's like G to B to B, government to business gamification, right? Very serious stuff. And yes, even the pre-sale, right? Like you said, it's not having a bunch of elements that confuse people, right? So it's thinking about the right core drive. So imagine you're doing a sale to someone who doesn't understand insurance very well, right? We want to give them core drive 3 empowerment of critical feedback, which is give them meaningful choices. Let them choose between 2 or 3 meaningful ones and not give them 100 ones that all have confusing terms. Social proof, right? Having a lot of that, say, hey, look, people are similar to you, also use it, and I think usually if they keep seeing more and more people like them are using it, they're also more into it. Epic meaning and calling. If you could say, hey, look, your religion supports this doing this, right? Your care about your family supports doing this, and your values about saving the environment support. If all these higher themes, all of them support doing this one action, sign up for this insurance plan, there's not gonna be like, oh, that's too much gamification, or there's too much elements. I was sold when I just saw the social influence, but now that I'm also convinced that I should protect my family, that's too much for me. It's usually it just gives them more strength and confidence in doing the desired action.
And that actually flows right to the next topic. So we know that managing rewards is key for successful scaling for a lot of our carriers. So how do we utilize more on the intrinsic motivations and be less dependent on the extrinsic rewards?
Yeah, so one thing I didn't talk in my quick presentation is a lot of companies, they like to go with extrinsic motivation. And it's not because it's better, but it's easier, right? It's just so much easier to give people a reward if they do the actions you want them to do, or give them money, give them badges or status, as opposed to making the activity itself more fun and engaging. Now, the problem is that the extrinsic motivation sometimes kill intrinsic motivation. So what does that mean? It's my example I give is that, let's say I love to draw and I always draw for free. It's my passion. Science have shown that one of the best ways for you to get me to stop drawing is to first pay me to do it. And then I'm excited, right? Yeah, get paid to do my passion, woohoo. And then pay me less and less and less, $50, $10, $1.20. At one point, I will refuse to draw because I'm not stupid. I'm not gonna draw for 20 cents. Even though before I met you, I drew for free. So you have transitioned my intrinsic motivation and passion of drawing into that extrinsic motivation of making money. And when the money's not enough, I lose interest altogether. Actually, one person who listened to my talk, he said, oh yeah. When I was volunteering for my church, I was on fire I was spending all day on this church activities. And then they made me a paid staff. And then I became really disgruntled. Like, oh, I work so hard and I get paid this low of a salary. It's like, I know I shouldn't think like this, but that's just, I just can't help myself, right? So that was a transition from epic meaning and calling, I'm doing something bigger than myself, than to ownership possession, like, oh, I'm getting paid to do this, and I'm a lowly paid worker. And so there's that danger there. So the question is about how to add intrinsic motivation. Again, this means that people enjoy it so much they're willing to pay you to experience it. And so in our research, all enjoying experiences come from those right brain core drives, 3, 5, 7, empowerment of creativity and feedback, social influence, willingness, unpredictable curiosity. Now, without those core drives, people they can still do other activities because it's meaningful or it's important. They don't want to be punished, but it's not enjoyable. And so the question is, how do you add, give people more meaningful choices, a sense of autonomy, sense of self-expression in the experience? How do you add more? So everything is more social when it's or everything's more intrinsic when it's social. So for instance, a lot of people since maybe middle school, high school, they hang out with the same 2 or 3 friends for hours every single day. And there's no progress, right? There's no friendship score that went up. There's no points or status. You just hang out and it's just evergreen, just like it. And even most adults, they think back and say, oh, I wish I went back to that time where we just hung out every day for a few hours, right? So that's not extrinsic. That's intrinsically enjoyable. And so even unpredictable curiosity. So we like surprising, delightful experiences. One example I give is if you sit there and you press a button for 4 hours straight and you're guaranteed a paycheck, that's kind of like a job at a factory. Most people don't like that. But if you sit there and you press a button for 4 hours straight, and maybe you'll get a paycheck, maybe you won't, maybe you even lose money. That's suddenly casino gambling, right? And a lot of people like that. and it makes no sense, right? The same behavior, one, you're guaranteed to pay out. The other one, you're most likely going to lose money. That's how the casinos make so much money. But our brains prefer the latter because we're literally just paying for that experience of maybe I'll win, maybe you're paying for the entertainment. So my friend will say like, oh, you come up to the casino, it's like, oh, I lost $200, but that was so much fun. Let's come back again next week, right? And so it's about how do you add those experiences into, or those core drives into your experience, and that makes an experience more interesting and engaging and fun. And that's when people want to stay there for as long as possible, and they want to tell their friends to go there to do it too.
I have to call out that in life insurance, there's this big reality that like a big part of life insurance, right, is that guaranteed payout, right? I'm just going to call, call it the product by virtue of what it is. It does seem I'll call it counterintuitive. And maybe I'll ask the product, even with the product that needs to be guaranteed and built on trust, can you add these types of things in?
Yeah. So extrinsic motivation is good for attracting people in, right? And it's also good for what we call justification, it's meaningful. So having a long-term reward is good, and that's why people sign up for it. But then on the day-to-day, the step-by-step, it should be intrinsic, and it should feel like I just like being here. And so a lot of times, even if you're giving people money, right, attaching those 3 right brain core drives help, because it's like, oh, well, maybe there's some strategy, maybe there's some optimization, like figuring out what's the best ways to use your airline miles, or people put out spreadsheets and they this is my grocery credit card, right? That's strategy, and that's meaningful choices. So suddenly the same extrinsic reward is a little more intrinsic. Again, the same reward, hey, now your friend gave it to you, right? It's a gift now. That's intrinsic added to that extrinsic reward. So sometimes you have designs where it's hey, you can get $10 or you can give a friend $20. What do you choose, right? So that makes it social. And when your friend gives you a bottle, like a bottle of wine, it's not the value is not just the value of the wine, it's the value of the friendship, right? And so there's intrinsic of that. And then unpredictable curiosity, hey, when you get this reward, is it through a raffle ticket, right? Is it a lottery system? Is it a mystery box design? Is there some kind of interesting, delightful surprise? One example is Chase picks up the tab. So Chase wants people to swipe their debit cards. So they did a system where whenever you swipe the Chase card, there's a small chance you'll get a text message that says, hey, Chase picked up your tab. Your $5 will be credited back to your account. Have a nice day. So even though it's not a lot of money and it's a very small chance, because it's so unexpected, people are delighted and they want to swipe more often to see if they can win again. Makes them want to tell their friends. And this only works because it's a surprise, right? So if Chase said, oh, well, we'll just tell you the math. Every 1,000 times you swipe, you'll get $5. Now people think, oh, well, on average, I swiped $20. So that means after spending $20,000, you're only giving me $5. I hate this company. This company is so evil. right? And so you're switching from that extrinsic gain to like that surprise element, and people enjoy that more.
We are on the hour here, Yu-kai, and I'm sure many of us could listen to you and understand how the market's using this for hours. But I want to thank you for joining us today. For those of you who don't know, Yu-kai and I actually met years ago, far before he was famous. But I was still coming to him to talk to him and get advice, as he was an entrepreneur for another tech company and a CEO for a company called Reward Me. So he has a long history of building things in both areas. But we just want to thank you for being here. We have a goal of always closing down on time. And I want to thank everybody for coming to today's presentation. These are all video recorded, so they'll be accessible on our site. And we're always looking for anyone to come talk to us directly about how we're utilizing this, and we'll connect. Yu-kai is available as well. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.